Hello, and good evening. I just wanted to jump on here real quick and let you guys know that I was working on the new book today quite a bit for a few hours earlier, and I made significant progress. I obviously did that video reading through the part that I had done, and that took me through the lead up to going through the actual timeline, the data points and everything. And goodness, it's kind of funny because highlight the sky, oh God, welcome, nice to see you. It's kind of funny because as I was reading through, I was proud of myself for having made the effort in my first book when I knew like next to nothing. It was in a Word document. It was like 184 pages, and I went through so much. And I was all proud of myself earlier today that I actually attempted all of that, looking back at it. And I was also proud of how far I've come and how much I've learned since then. And it was actually a little bit frustrating because I had to make so many revisions. But you know, it's good to look back at stuff and see how far you've come. So I was kind of a little bit proud of myself on a couple of different fronts there. Not to like pat my own back or whatever, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. And so I'm glad that I had the information there to work from because that was helpful. But I did wind up making several revisions. And I did what I should have done the first time, which was take my hopefulness out of it, my hopefulness for it being sooner rather than later, and trying to write it toward like, yeah, I hope it happens sooner rather than later, and just leave it objective. It's like, this is the data. It could be this, it could be this, it could be this. And beyond that, no, not really, because it's just not feasible. So it's more kind of looking at establishing the data points and constructing a timeline, one that's really just kind of out of the realm of possibility, to be completely honest, but doing the research anyway, showing how all the data points align, and then adding in data set 2 and then data set 3 to go through it and showing where all of those end up, if whichever set of years is right, because there's only one right possibility. And that will be what it will be. So I actually showed 3 different things. I did the research one time with one data set, and then I said, or if this set of years is correct, or if this set of years is correct. And again, beyond that, it just loses feasibility. So that's where I ended up today, was going through the prophecy in Ezekiel 40 verse 1, which actually has 4 different data points in it. It has the year of one of the captivities. There were 3 different exiles during the Babylonian captivity. And so you have to narrow it down to one, because it says in the 25th year after this, in the 14th year after this. So then it leads you to a year. And then it also talks about, because Ezekiel 40, chapter 40 through 48 is all prophecy, it then leads you to another point in the future also. So 2 of the years were past, 1 of the year was current to his prophecy, and 1 of the years is yet future for what will occur within that year, which is the construction of the temple, the coming temple, Ezekiel's temple. So there were 4 years in view in that one verse. So I started with the year of the captivity, which was the second exile of the Babylonian captivity, and then the year that the city and temple were destroyed. Solomon's temple was destroyed. So those were 2 of the 4 data points, and that leads us to the year of his prophecy. And then there is the establishment of, he was actually in a Jubilee year. So that's the first, Ezekiel's prophecy was given in a Jubilee year. So that's kind of where my own personal research started, where I read that and I was looking at commentaries and I got interested in it. So that was the very first study part of it that I did. Well, then you go back to Leviticus and you find that the Jubilees are predicated upon the sabbatical cycles and how the sabbatical cycles are calculated, when they start, all of that. So then that expands the data set to the year of the Exodus from Egypt and ultimately the year of the entrance into the promised land, because that's when the sabbatical cycles start, according to Joshua 4, 10th day of the first month. Hey, Dan, welcome. Nice to see you. So that expanded it to the original. Well, my data set included 3 of the 4 years from Ezekiel 40 verse 1, because obviously one's still yet future. So that ends the research, but it's not included in the actual data set because it's not a historic thing that you can point to. So then it included it, or expanded it to include 5 data points rather than the 3 of the 4 from Ezekiel. You have the entrance of Israel into the promised land and the year of the Exodus. And what else did I have? Oh, then that takes you back to 1 Kings 6, where it talks about Solomon's temple. And there are 2 data points there because it counts 480 years in the 480th year after the Israelites came out of Egypt in the 4th year of Solomon's reign. So you've got 2 years in that data set that you have to figure out to point to which year Solomon's temple construction began. So you have the year of Solomon's reigns beginning and ending. He reigned for 40 years. And then you have the 4th year of his reign, which is a certain year. And that year is in the 480th year after they came out of Egypt, which again goes back to the Exodus and the entry into the promised land. So all these things link together. And I had 8 data points in each data set. So obviously they have to correspond. And so I went through all of the research of how all of that's calculated with charts and everything. So so you can basically like see the way that I counted it out, and I explained the biblical verses and the support and how to calculate it, because some of them were in the 41st year, even though it was a full 40, because there was overlap. The years were on Nisan 10 to Nisan 10, as we discussed. The sabbatical years in the beginning of the year, 10th day of the first month is the beginning of each year. So if something runs from, like, say, Passover to Passover, and you're actually in the 41st year, because you have to account for those 5 days in another year. So it's a very technical study. And so I detailed all of that and broke it all out so that everybody can see for themselves, that you can count it if you want to, so that no one has to take my word for anything, because really that's like the worst part of anything, is just having to take someone's word for it. Hi, Katie, welcome. Nice to see you. Let's see, what other data point did I use? Yeah, reigns of King Solomon. So where I left off was revising all of that research and creating the data sets and the charts and all of that stuff. And then there's a chart to show the transition from BC to AD, because there is no year 0. So your year is not 1 BC to 0 and then 0 to 1 AD. It's 1 BC to 1 AD. And then from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, whatever. So I broke that out also, so you can show the transition, because it impacts the Jubilee timeline. If you don't account for that, it would offset it by a year and it would be wrong. Hi, Dorothy Fan 1, welcome. Nice to see you as well. So I broke that out. And again, the bulk of this was already in one of the books, but I did do significant revisions. And because I started out the data set, and when I originally wrote it, I still had a fall Tishri 10 Jubilee start time on the brain. It didn't come to understand that difference until later. So that was one of the updates that I needed to make. And that did actually impact when I was redoing my charts, how I did them, instead of using like multiple years, like from Nisan to Nisan. So like 1407, 1406, whatever is 1 year. I just made it simple, 1407, and whatever. So I tried to simplify it also, but there were updates and revisions and stuff. So then after I put all of the timelines together to show how all of the years correlate, all the charts and everything, then I did the final Jubilee year. And I said, according to the first data set used, which was the initial research, and that's kind of the outlier, the one that I really, to be honest, don't think would wind up being accurate. And then the second data set is more common, and the third data set even more common. But I did put multiples on there Because again, when you look at the research and you look at the different sources, everybody's got different opinions. And obviously it's nothing that I can independently verify because these are all ancient BC dates. So it's like, okay, well, this is what some of the research says, this is what other research says, etc. Let's look at all of it. Is some of it, I mean, obviously there's only one set of right information. There's only 1 year to which any of these things apply. So I put multiple things in there, but not suggesting that multiple things could be right. There's only one right answer. I'm just never going to be able to independently verify what that is because I didn't live back then. And I don't know anyone that did. And any of the written stuff is using the same deductive process that I could use as counting back and all of that stuff. But then you'll run into people who mess with the fall and spring stuff too, and that makes a difference. And it invalidates some of the research when people are starting from a faulty fall time period. And that's what the majority of people do, to be honest. And that's what I did when I first wrote this, as I had fall on the brain also. So I did clarify that, and I did essentially redo every single one of my counts to make sure that I had a good starting position. And I did find one inconsistency, and then I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to take out the source that I use to substantiate that, and I'm just going to put all of the data sets in there. Right or wrong, I'm just going to put it in there. And then I'm going to say, okay, and then there's this option, and then there's this option too. One of them is going to be right. I just don't know which one. So Dorothy says, you mentioned a sliding scale of years. It's not a sliding scale. It's just, like I said, I am unable to independently verify what year these things happened. Did Solomon reign from 971 to 931 BC or 970 to 930? I don't know. I wasn't there. Was the temple destroyed in 587 or 586? Well, the multitude of the sources say 586, but there are other ones that give other years, obviously. Again, I cannot independently verify it. Does that mean that there's more than one right answer? Absolutely not. It was a one-time event. It happened one time. There is a definitive date for this. We know it was Av 9, but people have, so it's just the thing that I cannot personally independently verify. Scripture does not say what year it happened. And so if you're starting from a point, it gives different counts in different years. And so you can move around with that, but your baseline, you have to have a baseline to start. And so that's just what I personally am unsure of. It's got nothing to do with whether or not there are multiple possibilities or not. It's just, I'm not sure which years are correct. Do I have good guesses? Maybe, but I guess we'll know if and when we get raptured, if I was right or whatever. Can I do another video showing the chart? I will when I finish it and I can print it out. Yes, I will absolutely be more than happy to go through that. But at this point, I am not going to because it's not available in writing. And to be honest, that's one of the things that's going to be way easier for people to see for themselves than it is for me to just talk about. So I will, when I post it on academia, I will print it out, and then I will do a separate video to go through the charts. But until I can do that, I'm not going to. And I'm not going to talk about it in a video. And I'm not going to do another video actually reading through any of it until I finish, because to be honest, it's only going to take me another couple of days to finish writing. The point that I'm at right now is I went through the different data sets. So data set 1 had those 8 different time points, or different corresponding to each other. And then data set 2, but if it's this year, then these are the data sets, and everything was offset by 1 year. And then data set 3, everything was offset by 2 years from the starting point that I started. Like I said, the original set of data is probably the most inaccurate, and that has dates that are 2 years removed from the most common. Second most common is the second data set, and then the most common is the third data set, which actually puts the year in question further away. So that's why I put all of them in there, is to just let people see how the research plays out. But again, there's only one set of correct data. It's just I am unable to independently verify what those are because I didn't live then. So the next point that I'm going to write about, because the chart says Jubilees since entry into promised land until ... question mark. 70. There's 70 Jubilees from the time they enter the promised land to the very end. Why 70? What is the significance of the 70? That's the next explanation that I'm going to give. I have not started revising that yet, but I will. So explaining the 70, Psalm 90:10 comes into there, comes into that. But then what I wrote was, in introducing the three different data sets, I said, according to the first data set used, the final Jubilee year will begin on Nisan 10 in our year of, and then I gave the year that falls on the Jubilee timeline according to how the Jubilees are calculated. And I said, below are restatements of the data points used in the calculation of each timeline. And again, there are three. But before anyone gets too crazy, we still have to talk about what event is prophesied to occur at the beginning of that final Jubilee year. There's much left to discuss. For now, the restatements of the data points are below. So I still have to talk about why the 70 is relevant to the number of Jubilees total. And I have to talk about what that final year actually corresponds to. And talking about the additional years that are left beyond that. So there's still a bunch of stuff I have to write about, but the actual timeline is now done. That was the part that I left off before in the other video. I had just gotten to that. So today I revised all of that to go through how to calculate the data points and to get from to move in between all of them on a given timeline. And then if the primary data set or set of years is not correct, which probably isn't, and this is the next option. Could each of those move 1 year and still be feasible? Maybe. Could they move 2 years and still be feasible? Maybe. So that's what I listed each of the three that I have on there. Could they move beyond that? Probably not, because when you have multiple different data points, and again, I have 8, the feasibility of being able to move every single one of them and still have everything, not lose the integrity of the data. So it's not a sliding scale of years. It's just how far can you move it before you start like being way off with the years that stuff happened in. And again, there's only 1 year that each event happened in. Solomon only reigned from this year to this year. There's only one option for that. So then the 4th year of his reign is only going to be 1 year. The Exodus from Egypt was a one-time event. It's only going to be in one specific year. The year that they entered the promised land is only going to be in one specific year. The year of the Babylonian captivity, the second exile, is one specific year. The year of the destruction of Solomon's temple is one specific year. These were not repeated events. They were one-time events. So there is only one right answer here. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about beyond that. I might get into a little bit of how Daniel's prophecies correlate to Ezekiel's prophecies, talking about what's going to happen in the 70th week, but I'm not really sure if that's the time and place to get involved in that. We'll see how it goes. When is it going to? I'm not sure. As soon as I get done with it and proofread it, I will post it and make it available, and I'll print it off and I'll start going through the rest of it on here. Can you post a link to the info you have in academia? No, I'm not going to post anything until I am completely done. I'm almost done. It's really not going to take me much longer. I got through, I'm through 56 pages of it. I still have 20 to go through, but really it's just a 20 of what I pasted in here that I want to include, but I might change that too. I'm really just not sure. Once I get writing, I'll know. Like, I have some ideas about what else I want to include, but I'm not gonna post anything prematurely. I want to have the whole thing available, and I want to do that because my research is always as complete as I can possibly make it, and I don't want to, first of all, leave anyone hanging to fill in their own blanks. From start to finish, it is a complete thought. And so I want to make sure that what I'm presenting is complete. I don't want to really, like, I dread people filling in their own blanks from me presenting incomplete research. That's like, I have a tendency to way over explain everything, but I do that because I do not want anyone to have to fill in their own blanks. So I realized that people wanted to know like what I have here. And as soon as it's complete, I promise you, I will let you guys know, but I will not present anything that is not completely complete. Don't forget to enjoy your summer and your family. Well, my summer it's strange. It's all messed up because I'm working from home. So if I have to be stuck home all the time, which whatever, at least I'm doing something I enjoy doing, which is why I'm writing. I am able to get back into the office one day a week. So that was good. Yesterday was my first full day back to work. So every Friday I'm going to go in. So that'll be a nice change. But and then when my son's coming home in a couple of weeks for a week. So that'll be nice. And then I won't see him again until Christmas. So, I mean, this kind of keeps me sane. We'll see. It's a lot of work. And, but I realized through this, like, I need to keep myself mentally busy. I can't just like, if I'm not doing something, I have to listen to something like all the time. I I don't know. It's just my brain likes to learn stuff. So that's part of the reason I like writing is because every time I write, I learn. Especially when I go like word by word. It forces me to learn because I have to make sure I know what I'm talking about in order to write about it. So yeah, as soon as I have everything done, I will present it immediately, but I will not present it before I am completely done. And I hope you guys understand why that is, but I will work on it probably more tomorrow. Since I'm starting a new section, I want to make sure that I go at it with fresh eyes and everything. But yeah, I did get the timeline done today. And I need to, because the timeline is incomplete without the explanation of what it leads to and what happens beyond that point. Because it's not the true end. It's just there's a specific event in view for that year. Ezekiel prophesies about it. It's the fourth year in view in his Ezekiel 40 verse 1 prophecy. So what happens in that year, I have not discussed yet. I have the timeline leading to that year, 3 different potential timelines leading to that year. But I haven't discussed what happens in that year because then there's obviously years beyond that to take us to the true end. So that part I haven't gotten to yet. So it would be irresponsible of me to present it incomplete before I get to that point. And I will be working on that. I imagine I'll be able to have this done next week. That's my goal. Because if I don't have it done next week, yeah, I'll have it done next week, within the next week sometime. So that's my promise to you guys is one way or another, I will be done in the next week. Since the second temple was destroyed, how can the Jewish people claim they can follow the full, complete Mosaic Law? They can't claim that, and if they do claim that, they are in error. It is impossible for them to, without a workaround of some sort, follow the Mosaic Law, and that is exactly why the temple will be rebuilt, so that the sacrificial system and the Mosaic Law and the priesthood can be reinstituted according to the Mosaic Law in the 70th week. That is like specifically why all of that stuff is going to happen. They cannot, without a workaround or a complete reinterpretation of what the meaning of those things is in the old law, follow it. And they can't without a temple. They absolutely cannot. And that's part of the reason why they will do that in the 70th week, while they will return to that. And that's why they press so hard for a rebuilt temple, is so that they can do that. Because I would imagine they are completely aware that they cannot actually follow the law without that temple. So yeah, but they can't. That's the simple answer to that question is they can claim that they can follow it, but they cannot actually follow it according to the old covenant law without a temple. So that's really all I had. I just wanted to come to you guys with an update to let you know where I am at with my research and all of that. is I made progress on another 20 pages today, 18 to 20 pages, something like that. So I will do more tomorrow. I actually have to do some actual work tomorrow. I don't technically have to, but it would be easier for me to do it during non-working hours while I'm not like trading time doing other things. So I'm going to actually work tomorrow also, but I will make more progress on this book. And I will, as soon as I am done with it, I will be more than happy to present it to you guys. And I actually got, part of the reason I started presenting it in the other video was because I got to proofread it while I was doing that. So it takes my proofreading time way down since I already proofread it as I read it. So I'm trying to like kill two birds with one stone. Like I presented the information to you guys, but I also like completely got that part of the proofreading done. I might change my introduction a little bit because I felt like when I was reading that, it came off a bit condescending, and I don't ever want to do that. Like, oh, it's so simple. It's not what I meant at all. So I think I'm going to actually change my introduction a little bit. But the 38 pages that I read through are already proofread now. So that reduces the amount of proofreading I have to do on the back end. So it was a multi-pronged attack there. And the rest of it I will present after I finish, after the link is there, when I have an opportunity to print everything out so that I can turn it around and like show you the charts and everything. But a lot of it will just make more sense if you can view it on your own. But everything is completely done, and I will have to proofread what I wrote or revised today, but a lot of that's already done. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say, is just kind of let you guys know where I'm at. I don't want to include unnecessary things, but I'm probably going to re-include the chapter that I wrote called The Timing of Dispensational Changes afterward, because it ties into the confirmation of the covenant and what that is and how that will start. Like I said, Ezekiel's prophecy ties really closely into the book of Daniel. And you're very welcome. Katie says, thank you so much for the work you have done and are doing. You're very welcome. I enjoy it. And I'm assuming that I will include that chapter again, the timing of dispensational changes, because Ezekiel's vision on a specific day in a specific year for what will happen in another specific year, which starts on that same day, just like 53 Jubilees apart, a lot of years apart. The rebuilding of the temple will follow on the heels of Gog and Magog. We know that from Ezekiel 38 and 39, Gog and Magog. Ezekiel 40 through 42, reconstruction of the temple. That's where all of this is leading. Is Ezekiel's vision, the fourth year that he points to, is what that vision starts with. And like the whole vision itself is pretty much about the temple and everything that's going to go on at the temple, except for the last chapter, chapter 48, which discusses the parceling of the lots, which goes back to Daniel 12, that at the end of the days, which is the end of the 1335 days from the abomination of desolation to the end, is Daniel will stand in his lot at the end of the days. So the parceling of the land in the millennial kingdom, the end of that process corresponds to the end of the 1335 days from the abomination of desolation. So aside from that chapter in Ezekiel's prophecy, and I'm talking about the prophecy from the vision that he was given from chapter 40 through 48. It's one vision, and he's just seeing a whole bunch of different things. Like everything refers to the temple in that whole entire vision, except for chapter 48. Chapters 40 through 47 are all temple specific. They start with the building of it, and then chapter 43 again goes to the timing. We actually see the sixth purpose of the 70 weeks accomplished when the anointing of the most holy, when Jesus actually sets foot in it, which again necessitates it standing when he comes back so that he can do that. And then it gives the reasoning for why they're going to build it and when they're going to build it. And again, that's going to follow on the heels of Gog and Magog. So that if you're ashamed of what you've done, show the form and the pattern and the goings in thereof and the goings out thereof and all of this to Israel and build it. Well, when are they going to be ashamed and contrite? After Gog and Magog, when God's like, yeah, here I am, I just saved you, and what are you going to do for me now? And then chapters 44, 45, 46, 47 all talk about different aspects of the temple. Chapter 46, actually, I think it's chapter 46. I want to actually read this because this does go into the timing of dispensational changes. And this is specifically what led me to understand how covenant confirmation is going to work and why Passover is in view. In Daniel 9:26, it says, "A Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself." Right? Jesus went to the cross after the first 69 weeks of years. We're done. And then in 70 AD, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end shall be, and unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. He is referred to as a prince. Why? Why is he referred to as a prince? Because Jesus is also referred to as Messiah the Prince. He is the Antichrist, the one who comes in the place of Christ. He's going to be referred to in the same way that Jesus is, because he's going to assume a role that is not his to assume, to allow Israel to believe themselves in a time period they are not actually in. And thus everything that has its place in the kingdom, the millennial kingdom, in Ezekiel, is going to also have its place in the tribulation. It has to. Otherwise, these things wouldn't align. When you're talking about the one who comes in the place of, he's going to do the same things as the real guy. Rider on the white horse, just like Jesus. He's going to be doing the same things. So when you're talking about the things in Ezekiel that relate to the prince, yeah, it's talking about what Jesus is going to do in the millennial kingdom. But it's also talking about what the Antichrist is going to do and mimic in the 70th week. He shall confirm, the Antichrist shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. How does he do that? Chapter 46 talks about the prince. Ezekiel 46 talks about the prince and the temple and the way that the prince enters the temple and the sacrifices that the prince is going to offer. Chapter 47, I believe, is where this is in view. No. Yeah, chapter 47, it talks about the borders, and chapter 48 talks about the parceling of the land. Where is the one I am looking for? Yeah, I'm not sure where the verse I'm looking for is. I'll find it though. It might be in Ezekiel 45. Yeah, Ezekiel 45:17. And again, this goes to the confirmation of the covenant. What is the prince's role going to be? What sacrifice is going to commence the 70th week? And it's what it is, confirming the covenant. Through bloodshed and death of animals. That is how covenants were confirmed in the Old Testament. If you go through any of them, there's always sacrifices of animals and covenants that are covenanted during or alongside sacrifices. That's like how it goes. So in order to confirm this covenant with Israel, there's going to be sacrifices that are offered. The Passover sacrifice specifically. And it says in Ezekiel 45:17, it shall be the prince's part. Again, and the people of the prince that shall come. Not talking about Messiah the prince. He's the one that was cut off, but not for himself. The people of the prince that shall come, talking about the Antichrist, the one who comes in the place of Christ. It shall be the prince's part to give burnt offerings and meat offerings and drink offerings in the feasts and in the new moons and in the Sabbaths and all solemnities of the house of Israel. He shall prepare the sin offering, the meat offering, the burnt offering, the peace offerings to make reconciliation for the house of Israel. What does Ezekiel 45:3 say? Or excuse me, Ezekiel 43 say? And if they be ashamed of all they have done. Ezekiel 43:10. Now, son of man, show the house to the house of Israel that they may be ashamed of their iniquities and let them measure the pattern. If they be ashamed of all that they have done, show them the form of the house, the fashion thereof, the goings out thereof, the comings in thereof, all the forms thereof, all the ordinance thereof, all the forms thereof, all the laws thereof, write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form thereof and all the ordinances thereof and do them. It's the prince's job to make reconciliation for the house of Israel, to, on these specific days, Sabbaths, new moons, feasts, to be the one who actually performs these offerings. This is how we know that either a Sabbath or a new moon or feast day is going to be involved in the start of the 70th week. He, the Antichrist, the prince, is going to confirm this. How is he going to do that? Through the sacrificial system. How is he going to cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease in the middle of the week? By not performing his duty as the prince to offer the sacrifices on these specific days, which is why you know it's going to correspond to one of those as well. He doesn't cause it by doing anything other than just not doing it, because as Ezekiel says, he's required to do that on those specific days. So this is how Ezekiel and Daniel's prophecies tie together, and how you can understand some of what's going to go on in the 70th week and how it will impact Israel and the temple and the actual Antichrist himself, by understanding that he's going to be the one who comes in the place of, and so he's going to be responsible for doing the prince's part, and that's spelled out in the book of Ezekiel. So I'm going to actually talk about some of that too, because it does go into the timing of dispensational changes and understanding the start of the week, the midpoint of the week, and then obviously the end of the week correlates to 7 years after the same day of the start of the week, because they're equal halves. So, I mean, that's kind of a given. So, but I did talk about the marriage supper of the lamb and the circumcision of the heart required rather than the circumcision of the flesh, which was required by the Mosaic Law and all of that stuff. And yeah, probably going to talk about that. So I still have a little bit more to write, and there's, I think, probably not a better time for me to talk about the relationship between Ezekiel's prophecy and Daniel's prophecies, about how that's all going to happen and how all that ties into dispensational changes, and how we can kind of see more of how they'll buy into this story based on what you would expect the Antichrist to do toward or for Israel, especially with regard to the temple, which again is what that last Jubilee relates to, is the construction of Ezekiel's temple. But again, that's not the same time as the second coming. That's 7 years earlier, on the heels of Gog and Magog. And why they do that, I've already discussed in the chapters that I read in the previous video. So it's all tied together. I just have to finish writing it, and then I will present it. Dorothy says, will all the Jews have to return to Israel for the prophecy to be achieved? I'm referring to their process called Aliyah. That is the expectation that will occur, yes. Because Ezekiel 39 talks about that. When I've gathered them out of the nations, they are no more there. I have poured out my spirit upon them. Let's see, Ezekiel 39. 39:25. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, now I will bring the captivity or the captives back of Jacob, and have mercy upon the whole house of Israel, and will be jealous for my holy name. after they have borne their shame and all their trespasses, wherefore they have trespassed against me when they dwelt safely in their land, and none made them afraid. When I have brought them again from the people and gathered them out of their enemies' lands, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations, then shall they know that I am the Lord their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen, but I have gathered them unto their own land, and have left none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, saith the Lord God. So yes, it is an expectation that on the heels of Gog and Magog, that Israel will be brought back into the land, and all of the stuff that happens in the 70th week regarding Israel will happen actually in Israel. There is no America or anything like that. It's all Israel-centric, and by that it means the land of Israel and the people of Israel in the land of Israel. So yes, the expectation is that on the heels of Gog and Magog, when the God of Israel is like, oh yeah, I'm here, I exist, in case you wondered, it's a unifying event to bring all of Israel back to God. And yeah, that'll happen. And as one, they will confirm the covenant with this prince and rebuild the temple, reinstitute the sacrificial system, the Levitical priesthood, according to the sons of Zadok. Again, all of that stuff is in Ezekiel spelled out. So yeah, those are the expectations. And we can learn a lot about what's probably going to happen from reading the prophecy in Ezekiel. The part that won't pertain is the parceling of the land. Israel is going to be at war, essentially, or people will be at war like during the whole 70th week. There won't be any parceling of land, but the rest of the stuff could apply. And I mean, there could be parceling of land. I have no idea, but it's not going to be done until the millennial kingdom for sure, for good, forever. I don't know how that part will work, but that does correspond to Daniel's prophecies in more ways than one. So I will be sure to discuss all of that. Is it conjecture? Yeah, because it's still prophecy, but assuming that there's, the Antichrist does the same things that Christ will do, and Christ is going to be the one fulfilling all of this prophecy in the millennial kingdom, then the assumption would be that this is going to be a mirror of that. Wrong time, wrong guy. But then it would essentially be a mirror of that. But it could be wrong, but it would make more sense as to why these things would happen and why Daniel words things the way that he does. Confirmation is going to be an action that the Antichrist is performing, and Ezekiel 45 kind of tells us why, and then causing the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and going into the temple to declare himself above everything. Well, yeah, because if he's the one offering the sacrifices to God, and then he stops doing that and goes in and declares himself to be above all that is called God or that is worship, so that he, as God says in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God, he's going to have direct access to do that if he's the one responsible for doing these things. And according to Ezekiel, that would fit that. So ease of purpose when you mirror the two prophecies next to each other, and Ezekiel kind of explains why or how what Daniel prophesies will be able to occur. They're kind of mirrors of each other. So that's going to be explained. I'm going to explain that. And again, that goes to the chapter talking about dispensational changes and why it's Passover that is relevant in this story. Because then if Passover begins it, that's a feast day. And then also, the prince doing the sacrifices, that's why everything is going to be Israel-centric until the midpoint, and then it's going to move to Babylon. Because wickedness, who's the woman, is going to be set upon her own base in the land of Shinar. Zechariah 5 talks about that, and then obviously Revelation 17 and 18. So, Ezekiel really kind of explains Daniel and how all of those things are going to be allowed to happen. But more to the point, all of that stuff follows directly in the chapters after Gog and Magog. So you kind of have your time period about how that's going to have to apply, and why it also lends credence to why Ezekiel's temple is the one that has to be rebuilt in the millennial kingdom, in the 70th week, because again, it goes back to Israel must believe herself to be in a time period that she is not. And unless those prophecies are fulfilled, and I say that in quotes because obviously, again, they refer to Jesus and the millennial kingdom. But if they aren't mirrored 7 years sooner, it's not going to work. And that is exactly what the premise is that he comes in the place of Christ, must therefore do the things that Christ is prophesied to do, until the point where he stops doing that. And then obviously that's the midpoint of the week. But I mean, it's kind of like the whole thing is Israel has chapters that tell them how things are going to go. So those things must go that way if Israel is to believe herself in a time period, and that all begins with the construction of the temple, Ezekiel's temple. And then it tells in those chapters everything that's going to go on in that temple. And again, in order to mirror that, it must go on 7 years earlier than what it's actually intended to talk about, which is Jesus. And that's why Revelation calls it, and 2 Thessalonians 2 calls it, the temple of God in the tribulation. So it is going to be the temple of God. Just a wee bit built a wee bit sooner than if they understood it correctly. So anyway, not to blab on, I didn't intend to be here this long, but all of that stuff is still going to be discussed. So as soon as I am done writing it, which again should be within the next week, I will let you guys loose on it. I'll post the link and everything, and I'll put it in a book on Amazon also, Kindle and paperback also. But I don't want to actually present anything half done or incomplete, because there's still way too much explanation that needs to be done. And I believe you guys are smart enough to fill in your own blanks, but that defeats the purpose of me writing it. So you don't have to fill in your own blanks. It's just there for you. So I appreciate you too, Dan, and I appreciate all of you guys. I enjoy doing this. I'm looking forward to finishing it. It gives me the opportunity to do something that was on my heart to do, which was to revise everything that I had written and to locate it in one spot and to expound upon it. So I'm getting to do that, which makes me happy because I'm clarifying the last outstanding stuff that I know that I needed to go through again. So now it's giving me the opportunity to do that, and I am thrilled beyond belief. And like I said when I started this video, I'm proud of the fact that I did that before. I'm also proud of how far I've come. So I'm like, it's kind of a double-edged sword. But the research was already there. I had a good foundation. I just had to change some stuff. But the timeline itself is done leading to that final year. But now I need to explain what that year represents and what is to come after that. Take it back to Joshua, the 7 years. And then during the 70th week, the dispensational changes and how that correlates from Daniel to Ezekiel as far as the mirror images of the princes. Messiah the Prince will be doing these in the millennial kingdom, but also Mr. Antichrist Prince is going to be doing them in the 70th week too, which explains how he confirms the covenant and how he causes the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and how he marches in the temple and does his thing, because he's going to have access to all of that and be actually responsible for doing some of it. So that's what's coming, and I probably won't give another update on that until I'm done. But again, next weekend at the latest, I should have that to present to you guys. If something changes, I'll definitely let you know, but that is that. So thank you to you all for being here, for watching this after the fact. Comments, questions, or feedback, please let me know. Otherwise, I will get it to you as soon as possible. So have a good night and a good rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys later.